tricky because being a Bengali, I know what the impact of a bit of rice can do to our to our brains. So it's good to see those of you who've made it. I'm just going to introduce myself. Usually there's somebody who introduces you, but even that responsibility is with me. So I'm going to try not sound too pompous or full of myself, but just to give you a bit of a context as to the work that I do. My name is Shreemoyee Kundu. It's a complicated Bengali name. Piyu is my pet name. You can call me Shree when you're asking me questions. That's how everybody refers to me. I began my career, I'm going to just talk shop to begin with. I started my career as a lifestyle journalist, soon graduated into lifestyle entertainment editor for leading publications like Times of India, essentially. I know that's not a good thing to say because media students, you know, their eyebrows immediately go up, yes. I fought against the system as much as I could. Also Asian Age, Midday, India Today and Metro Now, which was a joint venture of HT and TOI. After that, I diversified into public relations and I used to be strategic vice president for media affairs at two of the largest PR agencies, Hanmer MSL, now it's MSL Group, and Genesis Burson Marstella. And used to sort of largely handle the corporate strategic affairs, because when we look at PR, it was only rather at the time at which I worked, only looked at events. Even now, you look at a PR person who's standing with a press release outside a media office. But for me, it was more of strategic content. How do you advise clients on crisis management, for example? After that is when I think the biggest journey of my life started in 2013 when I wrote my first book, Faraway Music, which was critically very acclaimed. My second book actually is the one which probably qualifies me to be on this august stage today. It's a book which maybe some of you may have read. It's considered to be India's first feminist erotica, and it's called Sita's Curse, the Language of Desire. So 2014 was a big year, right? It was the year of the famous Modi election. It was the year when Wendy Doniger's book, for those of you who cover literature or read books, know, was pulped by a mainstream publishing house. And it was also the year of 50 Shades of Grey, a book which we all hid from our parents and spouses and partners, and even men were reading it really. And I wrote Sita's Curse, had nothing to do with Sita, but my publishers were obviously scared. You know why? Because it is now that kind of environment, unfortunately, for artists. Sita's Curse was the story, and I would like to bring that up because we're going to talk a bit about gender here. A story of a 39-year-old Gujarati housewife, Mrs. Meera Patel, and essentially how she was kind of freed, how sort of, she found her salvation, she found her power, she found her freedom, she found her voice through her body and through her desires. Because I think as women, we are always looking for validation and love. So much so that we forget that being desired is such an important component of being seen in our full femininity. That book sort of catapulted me onto the national stage, so to say. It won me the NETV L'Oreal Woman of Worth Award. And I started writing a lot on gender, sexuality and women. Area of sustained interest. I'm not going to go into my books. I've written 7. I have 2 more coming out, so it's going to be a boring sort of lecture. But I want to sort of fast forward a little to a book that I wrote in 2018, which is a book called Status Single. Some of you who've Googled me before, you'd know. So this is India's first non-fiction on urban single women. Before that, there was chick lit being written on single women, where essentially we were having this this love-sick, either a chubby heroine, which is a bit like the Bridget Jones Diary, continuation of that sort of epitaph of women. And this book, Status Single, was interviews with 3,500 urban single women throughout India to highlight the intersectionality of being single. So it's not just unmarried, child-free like Shree, but even unmarried women who may be with child, either an adopted child or a child through IVF, or a foster mom, and then of course the divorced, separated, physically challenged, LGBTQI. At that time, Section 377 was still not decriminalized. So I had women I was interviewing telling me, please, 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 nobody can get to know, my family, my workplace. It was still very hush-hush. And of course, trans women. In fact, Gauri Sawant, on whom a film now is being made, yeah. Sushmita Sen is enacting Gauri's role. She was a part of the book because she's, fighting for the adoption rights of trans single moms. So that book, again, internationally, it was called a seminal work of female identity by The Guardian, by the Sunday Times, etc. But what it led to is, I think, my life's work. It led to the mushrooming of a community of single women. So we have now a community of single women, which is called Status Single. We are there on Facebook. And we have chapters now in 9 Indian cities, and we are soon opening up in Dubai and UK, which is the first of its kind, a community. So why I mention that is because today's talk on gender, I feel it's so much associated with identity, right? And I'm going to start with a very interesting example. I just request the students here to get off your phones. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a strict school mom, but I'm just very distracted by people talking on their phones. Right, okay. So I was recently at Pune's prestigious Flame University to talk to students of sociology about the breaking of our traditional thinking on what is family. And this is in the aftermath of the Honorable Supreme Court releasing a judgment, which is one of its most path-breaking and historic sort of rulings, that the definition of family is no longer just the stereotypical heteronormative definition. If you look at school books, we foster, and I have a 13-year-old sister, if you look at her school book, the pictorial depiction of family is mummy, daddy, there'll be a dog or a cat, and there'll be a house, there'll be a car, nana, nani, and dada, dadi, and a child, a brother or a sister. That's it. So the Honorable Supreme Court, I think it really pushed the envelope to say that today a family by definition is even a single parent family. About 41% of homes in India are run by single mothers. And all of you who have been raised by single mothers, I was raised by a single mother till my mother remarried, I think are proof of the lionesses who have birthed us and nurtured us, right? Then same-sex couples, even if they are raising a child, Anjali was just talking about the couple you must have read because the news has gone viral, of the trans couple and one of the partners getting pregnant, right? It was all over the internet. And how she decided to go ahead with the pregnancy, stop her transition process, birth the child naturally, biologically, and then sort of go back into the journey of her changeover. And along with that, even a couple who are in a live-in. So I think what that judgment did was basically free us in a sense, because if we are changing the definition of family, and I was addressing a department of sociology where we were talking about what is family. So when I asked them, what are the words that come to you when we think of family? So the words that came to us are, blood, marriage, shadi, daddy, mummy. So if you're expanding the definition of family, you're also doing away with heteronormativeness. You're looking at family as anyone who is a nurturer. You're not looking at a mother who may have biologically produced a child, or a couple who are, bound in the eyes of God. You had Agni ko sakshi maan ke humne saath fere liye. Waisa couple nahi hai, So you're also, earlier, if you had a child, for instance, born out of wedlock, right? We've seen those movies, in the 80s with Amitabh Bachchan, like where you're calling somebody najais. It's an insult, calling somebody a bastard or a najais or illegitimate, And you would see like, tera baap kaun hai, tu najais hai, the hero would cringe and there'd be a sad song playing in the background. Today, by law, If a couple lives together for a certain number of years, the woman has complete rights. If they own a home, then it's 50-50. And a child born out of that wedlock is never to be considered as najais. He or she or they can claim the parental or the maternal property. So I think we've made enough strides. Now our topic today is on a subject very close to my heart. So during this lecture, there was a young man, and I'm using the word very consciously man, who raised his hand to sort of present a completely counter argument to what I was saying in my lecture. And I said, okay, fine, I listened, and like how all the speakers ask, I said, may I know your name? And he said, ma'am, if you don't mind, I'm not comfortable sharing my name with you. So I was a little miffed, not offended, because I teach and I deal with young people all the time. I said, I have absolutely no issue, but just out of curiosity, may I know why you have a problem with your name, or why you have a problem with me knowing your name? So it was an auditorium like this, packed, not after lunch, the session. So, he came forward and he took the mic and he said, I would like to say this. This is my name. It's an upper caste title. He's a North Indian upper caste title. He said, my name carries the baggage of my caste, my community, and most importantly, my gender. And I do not identify to all three. And why I'm saying this is because in this university or in many other universities, I'm sure it's the same here, or generally, today we have people who are ditching the normative, right? So you do not need to identify as this or that. There is a they, there is a them. There is a fluidity, there is a flexibility that is allowed and that is absolutely normal. So I think what he did in that lecture was, he actually challenged what is normal. So I think, I take inspiration from that, and I sort of begin my address with this, that when you talk about gender, do you realize what we preserve is the whole idea of what is normal. And the moment we preserve and we protect the idea of what is normal, we are also preserving, protecting, and laying the blueprint of what is right. And a lot of what is right is nothing but cultural stereotypes, social stereotypes, religious stereotypes, as well as, again, the whole gender stereotype, right? So now with Women's Day around the corner, you'll have a lot of this word gender equality. You'll hear about it in offices who will do fancy programs, bring in a speaker like me to talk. And they will talk about the lack of gender equality, right? We do know that India has one of the highest attrition levels at workplaces, right? And it's still a man's world at work. Then you'll have, a college calling an academician or somebody to speak about gender empowerment among its students. But if you look at equality, if you look at empowerment, it all begins from what is our understanding of gender. What do you understand? If I say gender, okay, let me do what I did there. When I say the word gender, what are the couple of associations or words or phrases that come to your mind? You can just throw the words at me. Anything, you don't think, just first glance or first observation, what comes to your mind when you say gender?
Identity.
Okay, I wish I had a board. Okay, identity. What else?
Restriction.
Restriction, okay. What else? When you say gender, what else comes to your mind? Boys at the back.
Society.
Society, okay, what else? When you say gender, just think of the word gender and what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Partiality.
So it's restriction, partiality, society, okay. What else? What else?
It's all in the mind.
Okay, it's all in the mind, but what else comes to your mind?
Appearance.
Sorry?
Appearance.
Appearance, yeah, appearance is part of the conditioning, right? How we dress a boy or a girl. But what else comes to your mind? Think of it.
Spectrum. Inequality.
Spectrum, inequality, of course, marginalization, society, divide. What else? What else? Think of it. What are the two things which keep getting confused? We keep getting confused between these two because we think they are the same. Absolutely. Gender and sexuality are often considered to be the same. Which is why I said, the moment you preserve something which is normal, you immediately make it a rule कि यही सही है. बिकॉज तुम ऐसे ही तुमने जन्म लिया है तो फिर यही सही है. So, what I feel that when we look at gender, right, a child is born. A child is born to a woman, right? A story like this, where a trans couple is transitioning and having a child, is a one-off. It's a very unique thing, right? It's a somebody had written as a comment on Facebook, freak show. You still look at it that way, right? Yeah, this is going to happen 1 out of 10,000 people में ऐसा होगा कि ऐसे couples भी बनेंगे, right? What if you have two, like I know, because I work a lot with LGBTQI communities, there are so many gay couples, two men, who are having a child through a surrogate. Of course, commercial surrogacy has now been banned in our country, but in the past they have had a child through a surrogate with one of their sperms. That's also a family. Now by the Supreme Court, the sweeping order of the Supreme Court, even that comes under its umbrella. But these are still considered to be, abnormalities. And I'm using words consciously here to prove, the words that you're throwing at me, right? So, when we take birth, right? पहले तो ये होता है कि हमारे birth certificate में अगर आप देखो, that's the time your gender is decided, right? Even before that, I mean, if I can get a little filmy, I mean, I'm not a birth mother, I'm a karmic mother, but I'm a foster sister. So if you go back, now if you see when the couple, they announce their pregnancy, the first thing is that, guesswork happens, that, अच्छा लड़का होगा या लड़की होगा, and one of the couple will say, oh, I'm dying for a girl, and she'll start buying pink booties, and we've seen this in films also, right, or in serials, that oh मुझे इतना चाह है कि मेरी बेटी हो. I'm hoping more people are saying this, that's why I'm putting that first. And you'll see they're decorating the nursery in a particular color. They have very girly, very baby girl kind of decorations or wall hangings. If it's a boy, then it's blue. So even before a child is actually born into this world, you actually decide what is the direction of their life in terms of their gender identity, right? And then when the child is born, think of it, for the parents, right? If you look from the time, the name is being chosen and the birth certificate, right? You have to put male or female, right? Now, of course, the third sex, again, let us applaud our country. It's very easy for us to diss our country, We keep doing that, right? Look, America में क्या हो रहा है? Look at us, हमारा इधर तो ये भी नहीं होता. But we should really applaud at least the Honorable Supreme Court for some. It's still stuck in the, dark ages when it comes to things like marital rape. Still not having the moral courage to, criminalize it, something as dastardly as rape. But it is now recognizing the third sex. But I am hoping for a world order जब हमारे birth documents में या school के documents में या family documents में, you don't need this. You don't need, because have you ever thought of gender as a choice? Were we given that choice? No. We are born into our bodies. So I remember I was, interviewing, interviewing as in I met him socially and then sort of did the whole thing. When I was asking him about the transition process, he is obviously changing over to become a woman. And he kept using that word, which you may have heard in a lot of films, etc., trapped in the wrong body. Right? How many of us even feel that we are trapped in the wrong body? Do we have the license to feel that? Because our gender is very much associated with genitalia, right? And by visual association, we know that a vagina is a woman's genitalia. Breast, vagina, this is a woman's terrain, her territory, her, identity. A penis, a scrotum, a testicles, this is the man's identity. This is a man's, turf, right? So right from the beginning, we are existing in compartments, right? When we go to school, I went to a very, very posh but very strict convent school where our mother superior, in those days we would have Irish nuns, she would not even utter the word boys or men. She would call them unholy elements, unholy creatures, you know. So I'm telling you, most of the time, I don't know if a lot of you went to strictly girls' schools or convents. You grow up almost, if you don't have brothers and brothers, like I grew up an only child without a father for a long time, with the only reference to a man being my 70, 80-year-old grandfather. So I would think, boys here, unholy, So I'm not only going against mother superior, it's like I'm taking on religion, I'm taking on society. That's what happens, right? The moment you step out of the box, you're not just risking pissing off your parents. It's the buaji, the tayaji, the fuaji, whatever, like the whole big bad Indian family, like they say, plus religion. How are we going to go to church now? Because anything which is organized, society, culture, family, religion, by the strict definitions, always will want your life in a box. So any movement which is an identity movement, be it an identity of your sexuality, be it an identity of your, your choices, anything is essentially you're taking on a system. Not one, you're taking on multiple systems because you're breaking barriers, you're breaking stereotypes, right? Also, if you've ever noticed, right now I had a meeting, I was noticing conference room, I'm sitting next to the head, all the people come, all the men sit in this thing, all the ladies are sitting together. Isn't that so common? I see that in my parties in Kolkata or wherever, all the guys usually they drink, so they'll go to the balcony, they'll smoke, they'll drink. The women are like, okay, somebody's got a small child, somebody's helping in the kitchen or whatever it is. There's this barrier between the sexes, which is sort of, it comes from right at the beginning, right? Because, in a family, you're always told, like if you look at earlier times, your father-in-law's coming into the room, to beta ghungat dalo. Just now, the lady who helped me with my sari, I wanted to wear it the Gujarati way as a mark of respect to this beautiful state, and I love textiles. So she was telling me that, ma'am, you're so lucky you can keep such a long pallu. Usually we also wear it like this, but we keep it shorter because I said, why? Is it because my sari is longer? She said, no, because hame to ghungat rakhna padta hai na. So like Sasurji aaye, ya, my husband's older brother, so immediately we have to put the ghungat. Na? So this length has to be more to pull it over our head. Pura itna ghungat hai. So there are still, here we might be a particular economical section of society, but there is a large part of the real India where a woman's izzat is still covering her head and keeping her eyes sort of diminutively lowered, right? So when we look at this whole connection, the nexus, like I call it, the unholy nexus between gender and sexuality, right? Do you see the two as different, or to you does it seem like the same? Like when you say gender, you think of sexuality. Any reasons why you do that? Like what's your definition of gender? What's your definition of sexuality? Your definition, whatever, it can be a layman's definition. Yeah, Harshita, are you raising your hand? Yeah.
So gender is about
Can somebody give her a mic, please? If you have one. Do you have one, or you can take mine? Okay, yeah. Sometimes the questions are very good, so it sort of throws a lot of light.
So gender is about how the person feels about himself and how do they identify themselves. Sexuality, according to me, is that what are their sexual preferences and who are they sexually attracted to. That
Okay.
to me is their sexuality.
Okay. So taking on from this, who we are attracted to sexually, physically, even emotionally, which I think is a byproduct of the whole mechanism of attraction, isn't that somewhat indoctrinated because of your gender? Yeah? What do you feel so? I'd like to know your views. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. Yeah, give him a mic.
What she said is correct.
Yeah.
With respect to gender, when we say, it obviously it takes the responsibility when you're talking about gender, whether it's he or she, whatever. It's the way of thinking
So
also
you have to
differs.
be straight.
Yes,
You have to
the way
think
of
straight.
thinking also differs with respect to the gender. The way of responsibility and attraction also differs. So that is how obviously.
And I was part of such an interesting, why I gave you the mic, I was part of such an interesting discourse on masculinity. Because the book that I'm planning is Decoding Modern Masculinity. So when we talk of masculinity, do you know 90% of men, we usually talk about banj and infertility when it comes to women, because we have a womb and we produce a child. But studies have shown that 90% of men feel pressured sexually, because there is so much of expectation. Be a man, मर्द बनो. इसका मतलब क्या है? वंश को आगे बढ़ाओ, बच्चा पैदा करो, And when couples are going to the IVF clinics today, the infertility rates are much higher in men. But why don't we hear about it? Why doesn't a college or a school or a corporate or whatever talk to, get somebody to talk about male and infertility, which is, it's a crying problem because of stress, because of pollution, because of our lifestyle choices, etc. And depression. Just depression, because men are sad. They don't have the emotional spaces to talk about things like, being bullied at work, being body shamed, being rejected, on dating apps or in matrimonial sites, being ugly, being fat, being dark, having less hair, having a paunch, right? Being squint-eyed, whatever. We think these things only happen to us, right? So the pressure of then reproduction. So when they are going to the IVF clinics, the doctors are being told by these men that, see, the wife is also saying ki, acha, now I'll take it on myself because it's okay. I mean, banj to like, we wear it like a crown, ha, bhai, we to are, kya kar sakte hai, We either produce or we don't, like machine chal raha hai, nahi chal raha hai, that. But uski batein mat karo, because then it's a anomaly, it's a big thing, Ki he is the eldest son of the family. How can he be important? He is like, my husband was born after 3 miscarriages. My mother-in-law went to 20 temples, before he was born. How can they now say that he has erectile dysfunction or he has a low sperm count? You can't, So that's why we hear less. So the pressure on men, that's what I'm trying to say, the pressure on men. Now when you look at sexuality, do we explore our sexuality outside of the box of gender? Do we explore our sexuality? I have a lot of boys at the back. Can somebody take a mic to them? And one of them is on their phone. So I'm going to ask you the question. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Trust me, this is more interesting than what's on your phone.
Hello.
So, I'm repeating myself because you were probably not listening. That, do you think that we explore our sexuality? You all are young men and women, or I should not actually say this anymore. Young people, right? Do you think in India we have the freedom, the cultural, the familial, the social and religious freedom and political freedom, let's put that on the table, to explore our sexualities, cutting off the blockage or the restriction of gender? So if you're a boy, then you grow up knowing that I have to like girls, and everybody around me likes girls. If I have to get married, be a dad or whatever, just hook up with a girl. Do you think we have the freedom to think anything outside it? Do we explore enough?
According to me,
Yeah.
Yes, according to me.
You do? You think you explore? Anybody else who thinks they do? Well, I don't think we explore enough. I could be wrong. I could be stand to be corrected. Yes, ma'am?
So I think
Yeah, just give her the mic. Can you say your name if you don't mind? I'm wary of this now.
It's So my name is Ishika.
Hi.
So hi. So normally I think we don't explore it much because first I never thought of myself as other than a female or a girl,
Yeah?
because in our family we have to be either a boy or a
Exactly.
girl or not like
Exactly.
any other gender.
Yeah.
So I did tell my mom once that what if I liked a girl?
Uh-huh.
I don't but what if it's not acceptable in my family?
Mm-hmm.
So from that, after coming to this college, reading about gender and we had a subject as well about gender.
Mm.
So I also thought that I never got to explore if I actually like any other gender.
Mm.
And people don't actually accept that you could like somebody
Mm.
else.
Mm.
So I don't think we explore
And
it
the
so much.
concept of sin, have you ever noticed? Because in India, any sexual activity has to be sanctified by marriage and ultimately the sacred job of producing children, right? So anything related to exploration of one's sexuality is a cardinal sin, right? I've done a workshop where young women, lesbians, they spoke about how they feel, this is their perspective. It's much easier for men to come out as gay. There's more support, there's more visibility. Think of popular culture. We've seen even Karan Johar get into this with Dostana, though he did it in a superficial, light, maybe caricaturish way, right? On a Kapil Sharma show, you have somebody wearing pink stockings. Of course, I've written to the Motion Pictures and Television Broadcasting Association saying that show should be banned because it's misogynistic and how. Don't know if you'll agree. It's funny, but you're actually laughing at marginalized communities and you're laughing at women, and I think that's disgusting, right? But anyway, I think he's redeemed himself now with an Nandita Das film, so good for him. But the point is that what I'm trying to say is it's tougher when you're a girl. Anyway, it's tougher, right? Because this is still a country where, I mean, the lady putting on my sari, for instance, she was constantly trying to put the pallu right across me, and I kept telling her, no, Didi, aisa mat kariye. I'm okay with, my palla covering one half of my chest. It's absolutely fine, and I'm very comfortable with my body and my sexual, imaging or whatever it is. But that's the thing, right? It's harder for a girl. Now, for instance, my mother, I'm 45, I'm not married. Sometimes when I'm chatting with my mother, who's extremely progressive, I would think so, she tells me, see, you can tell me anything, okay? Even if you want to, even if you want to live together with a girl, you tell me, it's okay, But see, by saying that, you're also, are you really, do you mean it? Because if my dad's here, if I were to just after the session tell him, okay, now I'm they, them, and I'm breaking the news to you guys that I would like to live together with a woman. God help it if I say that I want to change my sex. Why is that such a big thing? It's my body, it's my autonomy, it's my agency. Because go back to the time when the child was in its belly. The story I started, decorating the rooms. So we're not decorating the rooms, we're decorating the cages. And we're giving the keys to somebody else. Here, now lock me in, right? Now, I would want to ask a slightly older age group about the exploration of sexuality and whether gender allows you to explore that. I'll tell you why I asked this. I run a community of urban single women, and there are a lot of women who were married once, right? They are divorced, or they are coming out of those abusive, dysfunctional, toxic marriages, and a couple of them have now found companionship. One of them is even contemplating a civil partnership with another woman. So my question to them, because I want to understand, this is my domain also as a community founder, they are like my flock, right? That when you got married, were you bisexual? So all of them have answered, Shri, how will we know that? How will we, what is bisexual? So everybody, so one of the, in one of the lectures, I remember a man who was very angry at me for speaking this way, told me, what is bisexuality? It's nothing but convenience. Idhar bhi jao, udhar bhi jao, what, how can you call it an orientation? Anyway, I may be bisexual, ban sakta hai. I said, ban sakte hai? No problem. I'm not stopping you. Now section 377 is decriminalized. You won't be in jail for being a bisexual. But actually, what is bisexuality? I mean, I went to a convent school, like I told you, boys were called unholy creatures, and my first attraction, sexually, I may have even touched myself thinking of this, was with my school, I think I was in Keller House with my Keller House captain. In a girls' school, 90% of the girls used to crush on their seniors. I was really attracted towards her, a basketball player, great debater. I wanted to be like her. Here I was fat, buck-toothed, with huge body issues. She was like this diva in our school. I wanted to, so identity is also association, no? You relate to somebody. Today, men are working out for 4 packs. You want to be John Abraham or whatever. You want to be Tiger Shroff, right? Women want, we want the Besharam Rang, those flatboard apps. I want it. Whoever doesn't want, I don't know, but I definitely have to work towards it. But the point is that it is also an association, right? You see something and you want to be that person. You feel a connect, right? In a boys' school, 90% of the boys will have a crush on the older teachers, right? They will do it. I have friends and Miss this one, Miss Braganza, Mrs. Like, if you've seen Summer of 69, the famous movie, right? They say in every man's life there is a Summer of 69, right? There's always and then we've caricatured it to a Savita Bhabhi, right? But imagine the threat that a government, the elected political party had to ban a cartoon. Because they are polluting our Indian culture. So we'll not go there. This is not a lecture on culture and conformity. But the point I'm trying to make here, do you see sexuality as conformism as well? Would any of you agree that sexuality is conformism? No. Is it? Now we are challenging it. We are pushing the envelopes. We are exploring. But in the way it exists, do you think it's conformism? Yeah. If you can take the mic to the lady in the right.
I don't know if it is or not. Like, I think society somewhere expects conformity.
Yeah.
So
Remember the word that came up with gender, society. Couple of people
and
echoed
even
that.
with like liberal groups of people, like for example, I'm from a girls' school. I
Yeah.
spent all of my childhood till 12 from 5th
Join the
standard.
club.
Yeah, and obviously we had our crushes and everything.
Yeah.
And so over a period of time we grew up, and then we all had our boyfriends and husbands. So one day we realized that when we are talking to our boyfriends and husbands about these flings we had in school with our girls, after the initial shock, somebody was trying to justify to the men in the group that, oh, don't worry, don't be so shocked, all girls have lesbian tendencies. And I was like, bolna pada.
See, those are the stereotypes, right? All girls have lesbian tendencies. But we don't say the same thing of boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, by that logic, if you invert that logic, it's like all boys. So that's what the gentleman said. And if you look, again, this is not a lecture on sexuality. Usually I talk on sexuality a lot. But if you look at our beautifully diverse Indian culture, if you see the concept of the Ardhanarishwar, we've always had it. If you go into the because I write on eroticism, if you go, and again by eroticism we only think Khajuraho, Kalinga, Khajuraho or Konarks or, all of that. But if you actually study the sculpture there, if you study the history of eroticism is a school of thought, it's a philosophy, it's a way of life. And eroticism believes in complete gender fluidity. If you go and see the temple sculptures, you will see two women making love. Or two women making love and there's an animal. You'll see a dog or a snake or something. So it's not that it was promoting bestiality or obscenity or something. We are seeing it like that now. Because everything is about a lens. This is a lens, right? It's a bias. We all have these unconscious biases. So even when you're saying things like, if you become a lesbian, come and tell me. It's a bias you have. It's not that easy. You can talk to women who identify as lesbian, and if you hear their coming out stories, you will see their biggest struggle has been with the mother. For the mother to accept. That's why I say in any family where you see a woman really burning the bridges, we always talk about, having a feminist. It's the mother. If you want to change, if you want to go beyond the binary, which is what I usually call my lectures, you go beyond the binary. Then you realize that figure, the central figure in that home has to realize she is beyond the binary. Because as women, we are only roles, no? Daughter, girlfriend, partner, whatever, then, mom, wife, then again we go back into that cycle. It's the same for men. But because men don't talk about it, because we don't expect men to talk about it, right? There's lots more chahel-pehel happening in the world of women. Like, I was just thinking, if you look at the healing, have you noticed how many crystal card readers, aura cleansers, tarot card readers, chakra cleansing, something about Bach flower therapy. 90% of these practitioners, let me call them that, are women. I've never seen a man saying, come to me, I'll do chakra cleansing as a professional service. No, it's mainly women. There are so many festivals of healing now happening where, in a way, I'm going back to, the era where women were witches, where they were burnt at the stakes, right? Because of this, because they had we were talking about a new world order, which is that of the divine feminine. And we are in a country where the divine feminine is so abused, and that's so sad because we are a country of the divine feminine. And we are a culture which is so open. I went to Varanasi. I took my mother on one of her birthdays. And I was writing a book at that time, and just evocatively, when you see Ma Ganga, who, Ma, so you think woman, she's being invoked by that Ganga Aarti. Who's doing that Ganga Aarti? Who's worshipping the mother? Is these robust, bare-bodied, of course there's a whole caste thing of them being Brahmin, whatever. They are the ones who read the shlokas, they are the ones, who... So I would think that it's unfortunate that, we again, I feel because of this gender, this watertight thing, we also look at religion, like when we say God, isn't that thing, what if God was a woman? There's so many people who write about it, right? What if God was one of us? That's a famous song, rock song, right? But generally when you say God, in most of the religions it's a male authoritarian figure, right? So in a way, organized religion does endorse patriarchy. So when I'm thinking of this new world order, this more conscious world order, where we are able to segregate gender from sexuality, and we realize that if sexuality can now be a choice, then shouldn't gender also be one? And whose choice should that gender be? The parents who birth the child, the society who protect the parents, religion who sanctions society, who are like the Mai-Bap of society, or God, like through that religion, God, because we're always, running to God and everything has to be blessed by God. I'm agnostic, in case you haven't guessed. But, what is it then? Whose right is it to do that, right? So, I'm saying that we are looking at the world now beyond the binary. We are looking at colleges where students have the guts to tell a visiting faculty that, hey, I don't want to be called this because I don't identify. And I believe that if we are able to overturn these strict, restrictive, unfair boxings of people, what we are doing is we are completely doing away with patriarchy. We are taking on patriarchy. Because if you're saying now a family is not husband wife se paida kiya hua bloodline, why was family, anybody can answer this, when did family come into the picture? If there are any students of sociology here, or history, or maybe even political science might be able to answer it, or generally anyone. How did the family come in? Yes, sir.
When we started farming, land became important.
Yeah.
So passing on of the land.
Yeah.
So I think it's like
Inheritance.
Inheritance, and the man was like, why am I going out and working? Whose child is this?
Mm.
So it's ownership of the womb at the same time, which they want to have, because that's what they want to.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that if men could have kids, biologically, most
Yes.
of the problem gender wars would have been over.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with
It's
you.
basically ownership of the womb, which
It's
is
ownership of the womb. And I'll take this back a little, do a little interesting backstory. If you see the way, my mother was a widow, right? She became a widow at a very young age. And one of the earliest persecutions of my mother that I saw in her upper caste, upper class Bengali family was at my Mashi's wedding, where my mother did everything, to arrange the trousseau. We call it totto. If there are any Bengalis here, you would know. And she went to the shopping. She was part of the, deciding ki ye kharidna hai, ye blouse ke. But when the Gaihulut ceremony, which is the haldi ceremony, usually most Indian weddings have a haldi ceremony, it's only the functions of marriage or any religious festival, the arti, the boron of the mother goddess on Shidur Khala, which is the last day of last day of the festival, Vijaya Dashami. Everything is done by what we call in Bengal Eos 3, meaning married women. So Suhagan, exactly. So what happens when you become a widow? If you look back at the earlier times, the first thing is you're asexualized. So why is a widow's hair chopped off? Why is she made to wear coarse khadi than, which is basically a one wrap? It can't be like in folds, and it has to be a one cloth. Why does she have to eat vegetarian on Ambubachi and Purnima and all of that? Sleep on the floor? Or why is she banished to a male god, to a temple prangan, or to a place like Haridwar or Varanasi? We've seen the famous Neena Gupta film, which Vikas Khanna has done, right, on a widow in Banaras. We had Deepa Mehta's famous film as well on the same, right? Why was it done? If you look at Christian widows, let's not only talk about Hinduism. Let's look at Christian widows made to wear black with the veils. You've seen it all. Jane Austen, and they would call it the merry widow. Some of them would only marry for property and they would actually wait for the men to die so that they could inherit. Ceremony or a ritual called Iddat, which is if I'm not mistaken, a 90-day period during which these women are not allowed to come out of the house. And earlier times when it was very stringent, कि आप आईना नहीं देखोगे, and you will not talk to anybody. Mourning, there's always a mourning period for women. Now, what is that for? I mean, because you mentioned that, right? I mean, to control the womb. What is that for? It's basically to first understand, because in those days there was no ultrasound and MRI and all that. Basically understand, is this woman pregnant or not? At the time when the man died, number one. Number two, if she is, then kiska bachcha hai? Because he died, then it's not his, then she's an impure woman. So first thing, asexualize her. Remove color. Because who wears the signatures of marriage? India may or anywhere, it is the women. The Mangal Sutra, the Sindoor, the Chudas, the glass bangles, the feet rings. Down south, it's very common. The Chabi Ka Guchcha, right? All these things, right, which we associate with the feminine thing are basically mostly symbols of Suhag, right? So the moment the man dies, that's taken away from you. So when did family come then? Family came when it was about bloodline. And when we talk about monogamy, right, there's this whole thing of open marriages now, which is very common. People put on Facebook, etc. Initially, even the whole thing of, yeah, I know. So, yeah, okay, thank you. So initially, if you look at the whole thing of monogamy, why was a lot of people now say monogamy is a myth? Because most marriages are open, so much of infidelity. Go on Bumble, Tinder, half the guys are married, or half the women are married, whatever. But monogamy also was basically done to, again, to quote your words, sir, to control the womb. Because men are anyways polygamous. They've gone to harems, they've had harems. In Bengal, in the Babu culture, the zamindars had to have a baiji. It was important. You're a man of wealth, you have to keep a woman. She's your keep. It's something of your pride, it's something of your mardangi. The Kulin caste in our community, they could marry 100 times. Child marriage. One man who's in his middle ages is marrying so many young girls. And when he's dying, there are about 5 girls, chotu girls of various ages with, bald heads, etc. Such cruelty. Even now, though child marriage like dowry has been abolished by law, there are states which are practicing child marriage. Also, if you look at the rates of child sex trafficking in India, you will realize that the premium in a red light area which is put, and you hear this word a lot in films which deal with red light, nat utarna. It is of underage girls who haven't menstruated as yet. And look at the irony. In a Durga Puja, we are doing Kumari Puja and we are worshipping an underage girl, a male priest worshipping. There's so many dichotomies, right? So once closing the lecture and opening up to some questions. Once we ditch the idea of family as lineage and blood and inheritance and patriarchy. Yeah. Imagine there's no family politics. What is family politics about? It's all about inheritance. Na, isko do kamra mila, mere ko nahi mila. That jewelry set mummy gave, Usha, she didn't give me. Why? What is this? Because I got married up. Yehi to hai na. This is the kahani ghar ghar ki, right? We all know that in India. So if you remove all that, think of what your own gender would be. That is what I'm saying. If sexuality today, we are in the battle where we can fight to say, my sexuality, my choice. And that choice can change. Like that girl told me, but Shri, how did I know I was bisexual? Then, okay, then after marriage, what happened? Yes, after I got out of my toxic marriage, I healed myself, I worked on my self awareness, my self growth, my confidence, got back to working, then I was attracted to a woman and I followed that attraction without the voices in my head. Because already I was kulta, no, already I was the outcast, already I was the one who's not part of the majority. I'm not the Suhagan, quote unquote, anymore. I mean, my husband might not be dead. But divorce in India is almost like death. People, when a parent, they hide it, right? Abhi mat bolo, ha, wedding hai family mein. Kyun? Because people will give you condolences as if somebody has died. I'm so sorry, sir. Your daughter got divorced. And you should be congratulated, sir. Congratulations, your daughter and or your son. They are now free from an arrangement or a love which has either outgrown or it was abusive. So then all the more brownie points. But no, we don't do it, right? So I am saying that we are on the cusp of not just a gender revolution, but also going beyond the binary. And I would really urge, especially in academic institutions, I really learned that day something from this young man to not put labels on young people. We are caged by our conditioning, by our conformism. I look at, my sister who's 13 told me about a girl in her class who is going around with another girl. And much that I'm this Shri and I talk about it, there was a little flutter and I said, Babu, we've not had the talk, quote unquote, parents will know what I'm talking about. But I said, is there a chance that girl could be you? Because she was not telling me the name. And my sister looked at me and said, she's not the only one in class. That's what I'll tell you. And I think it's so beautiful that she has a vocabulary for her exploration, which I didn't have, which my mother was denied, which her mother couldn't dare of, which her mother was not even born into. We are living that world. And I hope the young people here and the older people and my dad's here and so many of you must be parents, you look at it that way, because I think when we talk of gender sensitization, we also do it like wrongly. We gender sensitize children without gender sensitizing the parents. But what about their parents? Because these parents are shit scared of their parents, yeah, and their parents of their parents. It's like a cycle of toxic worshipping of parents when it should be equality even at home. They're your parents, they don't own you, right? So I think we have to free our mind. We have to segregate gender from sexuality and be unabashed in exploring both. I stand corrected by my young friend in the Pune University to not label people and assume that just because this gentleman is wearing a pair of trousers, he has a beard, he has a mustache, he looks like a man, that he actually feels or he wants to be identified as one. I think that should be a fundamental right of every human being, the right to choose. Right? Thank you so much. Are there any questions? I'd love to take a couple if we have time. Or any thoughts? I mean, let's not put it as questions, but if there are one or two thoughts, anyone? Have I bored everybody into a lull?
No, not at all.
Okay, yeah.
Hi, my name is Manika. I want to thank you for your session because I think you are the first woman in my life who has actually explained me all this and so beautifully. So for
Okay.
explaining it to us, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Thank you. I'm happy to be of service. Thank you. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ankita. I would just like to, rather than asking, can there be single status while staying in a relationship?
Well, you'd be surprised, Ankita. You know, we have an online community where, in order to join, and if you're single, in the sense, if you have single moms, sisters, friends, I don't want to plug it, but my community is called Status Single. You can search us up on Facebook. You have to answer 3 questions, very simple, just to get in, and then we put you into our city chapters, right? But if you don't have a city chapter, say you are in Ajmer and we don't have a chapter in Ajmer, you can be part of the online community. Every day, there are about not less than 50 to 60 requests coming with personalized messages. Shri, I'm not. So, what is the criteria for my community? You have to be legally single, which means you can be legally separated also because divorces take ages sometimes in India. So, you come in. We are married, legally married, but we have been emotionally single, sexually single, financially single also for years.
Because in India it is very difficult, to come up with this openly that yes, being in a relationship, I am single. In any of the form, it can be emotional, it can be, physical.
I think when you say that as a woman, because I write on women, and if you, I mean, I would, again, not plugging my books, but you just have to Google my books, and if you read Sita's curse, every Indian woman is desperately lonely. We want to be understood by men, but in order for that, like I said, for gender equality, first the men have to understand themselves. They have to come to terms with their masculinity and not just see it in the way patriarchy has made them. Ki you are a provider and protector. तुम पगार लेके आओगे. You're a 9 to 5 daddy. No. What if you strip away all those layers like an onion? You take it away. You're not a CEO. You're not a doctor. You're not a this. You're not a that. You're not a dad. Who are you? The search for self, which is actually the objective of every world religion. It's so sad that today it's bastardized to what it is, right? But when you say that, I feel a sense of sadness that when I have to reject those members saying that I'm sorry, ma'am, but our criteria, we are a single women's community. If I start allowing married women also, तो देश की पूरी जनता will become, So, but look at it. You identify with being single.
The reason is because I have also work ex of around 12 to 13 years. I have seen many women, those who are either legally single or those who are not even legally single, but they have come up with the experiences which has really shown that they need some support in that.
Well, I think our community or women should support women. But like they say, we're creating generations of empowered women, but who's empowering the men? So I think we have to empower and do it together. And of course, you're free to reach out to me for any kind of support. If you're the person asking, I'm here.